All right, folks, I'm going to call this meeting of the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission to order for Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Please set your phones on stun and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Lambert, nice to see you. Please call roll, please.
Tom Slinsky,
Here.
Tom Gozdecki,
Here.
Anthony Brodnix,
Present.
Dave Castellanos, absent. Ron Ware,
Here.
Chief, absent. Levon Whitaker,
Present.
William Baker.
Present. We have a quorum. Let's roll along. Next up is statements to the board from the floor. If you'd like to help us, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Looking at you, gentlemen, going once, going twice, going three times, closing that, going on, moving through to the approval of the minutes for May 21st, 2025. I'm sure you all reviewed them. Changes, motions, what say you, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 21st, 2025.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? A second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye opposed. They're out there forever. Check the website as it relates to everything from the fabulous video of these meetings to all of the documentation and the things that need to be done to make sure that what's on that board from September 2008 never happens again. And that's now that's framed after how many meetings has this been to now? Pretty much most of them, hasn't it?
Yep, only missed one.
Only missed one. And what happens if you do not maintain a man-made flood control project? So the reason we're here is specifically to make sure the expressway, people's homes, the absolute commerce that happens in Northwest Indiana along the Borman Expressway doesn't come to a screeching halt because nobody's paying attention to the maintenance of a flood control project. We are far better prepared today than we were prior to 2008, but this is a project that's dealing with Mother Nature. So if we do get 10 gallons of water for our 5-gallon bucket, we're going to have some issues, but we're far better prepared today than we were prior to what happened there in September of 2008. This is a economic development project. In my opinion, because of the fact that we have this system in place, it meets all the criteria of the federal government. Property owners within the area of this particular river is not required anymore to have federal mandated flood control insurance. If you live next to the river, it's highly recommended that you have an insurance because this is a Mother Nature type of a situation and she can be fierce. Enough for me. Next up is the finance report. We need to approve the claims from June 2025. We need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the claims for June 2025 in the amount of $1,079,512.32.
We have a motion to approve the claims. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Mr. Repay, spending some money.
Good afternoon or good evening. Yes, we are. As always, I'll go through most of the claims and then you'll get the point. And if you have any questions about any of the ones afterwards, feel free to ask. We'll start with the town of Maryville. They typically wait towards the latter portions of their applications to turn in invoices for us for reimbursement. So the first one is for the Hickory Ridge Flood Control Improvement Project. That's for $401,246.88. The other one is for the storm sewer network improvement project that you guys approved, and that's for $239,747. Follow that up by Hassey Construction. That was our culvert cleaning work underneath 8094. They are wrapping up, although this is not the final one. They've put the blankets down for seating so that we can sort of get some cover down there. That's for $116,638.38. We will go to BVP Enterprises. That is a partnership that we have with the Lake County Drainage Board to help some of them clean some of their legal drains. That's for $19,800. That was for Cherville Ditch, so it's basically behind Myers Castle, going south to 73rd. And then we have design work for the Optimus Lake or Optimus Pond, whatever you'd like to call it, for $17,850. That's for the boardwalk work that we're doing. And then we have a claim for Christopher Burke Engineering for $16,850 for the East Reach Levee System geotechnical and structural evaluations. And you'll also see that they have one for $5,883, $863.75 for the hydraulic analysis and levee survey. And that will be shown later on as a part of their presentation.
Any questions for Mr. Repay on some of these bills?
Georgia Street,
Yes,
is that like that little levee that we talked about years ago?
yeah, that's that's at the corner of where it gets to Virginia, where it comes around the corner, where it's a low spot. It's up to the city right now as to how they want to handle it. We started the design of it, we showed them some options. And it really is coming down to whether you can put a small levee or raise the entire road. Raising the road would be quite expensive, but that's certainly in their, I guess it's in their court to decide what they want to do with it. It generally floods when we have a decent sized rain because it gets sort of stuck because there's no pumping mechanism to get it back into the levee.
Thank you.
Was Cherville ditch, was that a application or was that just something that came to us because of?
Cherville ditch was it was an application before, but since we had to get to these trees before the Indiana bat ordinance came on, we went and just told them we were gonna go do it since we already had a crew out there.
And is the culverts under 8094 done being cleared or?
Yep, they're done.
So we're paid out? Is the retainage still?
We're not paid out completely because they still have to establish the grass seed along the area over there. But we have submitted the videos of the actual culverts. That was in coordination with NDOT as well, because we let NDOT go down there to inspect as well, since it goes underneath 94.
Thank you. Any other questions about the bills? There's a motion and a second. Mrs. Lambert.
Steve,
Yes.
Tom Gazdecky,
Yes.
Anthony Broadnex.
yes,
Ron Ware,
Yes.
Levon Whitaker,
Yes.
William Baker.
Yes. Moving right along. Mr. Repay, what's going on in the field?
We've engaged two engineering firms to provide independent inspections for the Hammond, Highland, and Munster levees. The gates will be inspected by Wessler Engineering. Butler, Fairman, Seifert will be doing the pump station inspections to basically mimic what the Corps has done. The Corps doesn't have the funds to do that this year. And I know you guys find it important to at least inspect it at an independent level. And they're gonna mimic exactly, like I said, what the Corps does. If there's anything that's found in fault or that isn't working, we would address it. It's better to find out before then to deal with it when there's an emergency. We did start the second cycle of mowing this week. Although probably they stopped a little bit early today. But we started on the far east side off of 65, and they'll probably be through the system all the way to the state line by Friday. So we're gonna be done. I'll tell you, the grass keeps growing. I don't know how, it's not much rain, but we get it on occasion. The sun isn't helping.
So Dan, I have a question on
Yeah.
cut grass. We've been doing it for a while. Are we doing it along the bridges? So specifically, I'm thinking about the Indianapolis Boulevard. I drive over that thing. I mean, are we responsible for cutting along the guardrail per se, the bridge itself? Or is that a county thing? Or is there some way that we could help make it not look so neglected?
Well, if you go by there, probably by Friday, I think it will be looking a lot less neglected because they'll go through the system. But to answer your question, as far as the boulevard, yes, we are responsible for the approaches on the boulevard from Casey's to all the way to the Verizon store or whatever that is. And then on the other side is the truck stop and then the bus terminal.
But our vendor will go onto the deck if there's things growing on the deck of the bridge. I mean,
Not on the bridge, no, but on the approaches. They have a team that will do the wheat whipping on the, around the guardrails, but they won't go on a bridge per se.
all right, so they won't walk across the bridge and knock down all the weeds that are on the bridge.
I mean, the approaches they will, but I guess it'd be better to look at it better to look at it after.
Because if we can do that, it makes more sense if we're doing the approaches and everything else as opposed to waiting for the county to come out there, which sometimes they don't
No.
remember where that is.
We try to keep it in order.
Thank you.
408 permits, since our last issue and conversation, we now have a regularly scheduled Friday morning meeting with the Army Corps, and it sort of makes this or hope to make this process move a whole lot better. We did receive our 401 permit magically from IDEM on the part where we are doing the slope stabilization, where the riprap is. There's a few areas, one's off of Forest, one's off of Grant, there's an area off of Northcott, so that's what we're doing.
I have a
That's-
question on the
yeah.
408 permits.
Sure.
How many projects are being held up because we have to wait for this piece of paper?
Our projects, 4 that I can think of right now. The bank stabilization's 1, the geotechnical is in process 2, 3 is the sandbar. And there's a 4th one, I believe, with the pump station rehab work that we're doing off of in Highland.
And as an ish, what's the time frame we've had on the longest one waiting?
Right now, we're over 2 years.
Right,
Which is what precipitated these meetings. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult to budget.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving on, we're gonna go to the Lake Station Trail first. That was by the rock riffle. We're gonna extend that. We've always planned on extending it. So we're gonna extend it to Liverpool, then we're gonna extend it to connect to their existing trail system off of Wyoming. And along that same line, you guys deferred Lake Station funding for their application. And what they decided to do is split the project into 2. So it'll be one base amount, taking half the extension of the culverts, and then a second alternative bid will be for the whole thing. So that we have a good idea of what numbers we're dealing with. As I explained to them, it's hard to approve $2.3 million on an engineer's guess if they actually bid it out and it ends up being $5 million. So that wouldn't really help us. So they're hoping, they're hoping that they'll have everything, not an award, but at least the bid opening in mid-July. So hopefully that coincides with our meeting on the 17th of July. Regarding what's going on in the field, besides the grass cutting, their pump station at Bird North Pump 1 was experiencing a leak. We have the new SCADA system in, so it kept on showing up. We first sent out the electrician to make sure that the wiring was all done right. It is, and now Flow Technics is out there, and they pulled the pump on Monday or Tuesday. One of those days, it was early morning. And so they're gonna take it back to the shop to make sure all the seals are working.
How old's that pump 1?
It's been a couple of years since we reworked it, but
There's what,
also-
2 in that station?
There are 2 and a sump. 2 and 2 sumps. But that's probably one of our busier pump stations. Besides probably Grant West would be the next likely not importance, but most used. would be the one.
That's a short amount of time though for that pump to under.
So we're just gonna see, that's why we're seeing what the seal is happening.
What's the warranty? Do you know?
I don't have that.
They should definitely cover.
It may be a year. In which case we'd be out of the warranty, but I don't have that exact. We thought at first it was a new SCADA system that was shooting it. And then it kept on going and then we tested it, so.
Because we had talked in the past about tracking those pieces of equipment, how important they are as far as all the maintenance, when those things were done, as far as when the purchase was, when we set them. Because I mean, all of those in Gary, we took those over, 10 years ago? And redid them all.
But we've redone them twice now, in some cases, because of the life cycle of them and how often they're being used. Like, for instance, Broadway doesn't get used, Ironwood barely gets used, Marshalltown's a much smaller thing. Grant East is purely just off of what the truck stop shoots off to us. 32nd and Grant is just the farm field. So we have that. I don't have it with me right now, but I could tell you probably tomorrow. when that was done last, because we have all the
So Burn North and Grant, how do you,
west.
West, those are the two most heavily exercised, let's use that word.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that has the most flow coming through it at a period of time.
Those are all different sizes. So none of them are plug and play.
No,
We actually,
Would
we
it make,
designed,
would it make sense to have a,
be a lot of money.
so as a part of Superior's analysis, when they went through the pump station earlier, they recommended and we were about to implement putting the second, that's why I corrected myself, we put the second sump in. So that we don't put as much stress on the two main pumps that are there. And so once it gets all functioning, there should be two sumps that are running either simultaneously or whatever, unless it becomes overwhelmed, at which time it would then, the main pump would take it over.
Was
But yeah, of course, it's not the same pump.
was someone just not keeping up, or what did they, what
But he just kept on showing up when we put installed the new SCADA system, they kept on showing up and alarming. So I get an alarm every time a pump was in a failure mode of any sort. So we kept on doing it and they thought they were just gonna do testing, and it wouldn't
Testing.
shut off. And so then we brought them to the station itself, they worked the wires are all fine, so they have to only logical choices to open up the pump and see if there is something that went. We started the seasonal treatment for the mitigation. We've got a couple areas, Chase Street is one by the natural spring. And then the other one, we have in Lake Station. So they've, Stantec has started that application process. We've sent out offers to some properties that we believe that are needed as a part of this, above and beyond what the Corps has required for various reasons. Billboard license agreement is still under negotiation. They're up and expired in November of this year, and then later on in your meeting, we're gonna do the compost. And I won't forget, because she just walked in the room, the council president for City of Gary helped us pass the no discharging of a firearm in the city limits, which will help us immensely deal with people that like to trespass and shoot weapons on and around our property. So thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
With that, I'm not sure I have anything else.
Any questions for Mr. Repay about what's going on in the field?
The only thing I would add is that we somehow get some type of checklist or inspection from because when these pumps get installed, it's just, you can't go back and do anything because you don't necessarily have it sitting in storage. And so it's getting directly installed. The only thing I would ask is that we have some type of a checklist. And it would be even better if we had some type of a factory acceptance testing process. So that when they are, because I hate to think that the impeller came off of the shaft, which is a common failure mode that's sort of being described as if it's not keeping up. The keyway came out, but it sounds like it's a situation like that. And that's a manufacturing, not a manufacturer, that's a repair vendor issue. And sometimes that happens and you don't catch it until time goes on.
Yeah, we have the reports that they did test them in the shop. I don't know everything that goes through that trash rack, but if something got through the trash rack and got stuck in it, I don't know.
Do they give us any as left type pictures of what the final pictures were? I know they
Well,
probably
after they rehabbed it 2 years ago.
I know they.
I could look in the maintenance file that they sent us, because it would be a part of the billing, so.
Okay, and the other thing, can you request a strip report, which basically says this is what the as found is, we came in,
What's it called?
a strip report.
Script report.
What is that? Is
looking at
that going
just
into the,
this-
is that going into the shop or coming out of the shop?
The strip report is as found, as the condition is when they bring it into
Going into the shop,
Yeah, coming into
going
the shop.
in for repairs.
We don't want to pay for the same thing that we've already paid for, and it should have been done correctly the first time.
2 years ago?
Absolutely. That pump should have lasted not less than 10 years easily, unless there's some severe erosion that we don't know about between the impellers and the balloon.
Yeah, but if the warranty is only
Warranty?
one, then it doesn't really matter what we
I don't
think.
have it. I don't have it right now, but it's been 2 years roughly.
Shocked somebody's warranty that after 2 years.
No, I agree with you.
What was that?
I didn't say,
He said that he'd be shocked if there was a 2-year warranty on a piece of equipment like that.
I would agree. Especially out in the field in those.
And that's
conditions.
okay. But by the same token, we should expect it to last longer than. And depending on what the cause is, we should, avoid reoccurrence and as much as possible
That's fair.
to mitigate that.
That's fair.
Any other questions for Mr. Repay about what's going on in the field? Mr. Broadnex?
Negative. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Repay, introduce the presentation, please.
yes, AJ, are you there?
Here we go.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Mr. Repay?
Well, yes, here we go, Mr. Chairman.
I can
AJ
hear
is
you
gonna
on
give
Zoom
us a
loud and clear.
presentation.
He's on Zoom, we're on tech, I can't.
Well, he is on Zoom because I think it would be better use of our money and time for him not to have to travel to Munster and stay in Indianapolis. And I think he'll do a good job of it. So he'll give us, we signed an agreement with Christopher Burke some time ago about doing a levy survey and freeboard analysis. And I've shared with you some of the information that over the course of time, parts and pieces. But this is going to be sort of like a full overview of what he sees, what it's compared to for the 200-year flood event to the as-built, and maybe a couple places where we need to address, going forward that maybe the Corps may have missed. So with that, AJ, I hope I didn't steal your entire report, so go with it. You want?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Repay. Just to check the audio, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I will share my screen now to get the presentation going. You can give me a confirmation that you can see my screen okay?
We got you.
All right, excellent. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight on the surveying and freeboard analysis that we're conducting for you on the Little Calumet River levee system.
Oh,
Okay, get the slide to advance here. There we go. Give you a brief outline of my presentation. First, I would like to discuss the purpose and scope of the project that we're doing for you. And then I will talk about the survey data collection and the information that we gathered from that. Following that, I will get into the freeboard analysis and our findings, and then talk about the next steps where we go from here. So first, let's start with the project purpose and scope. The purpose of our project was to evaluate the levee system freeboard, or the height of the levee, with respect to FEMA requirements. So we also wanted to collect data that could be leveraged in the future to apply for a letter of map revision, or LOMAR, or continuation of the previous LOMARs with FEMA. So as a reminder, a LOMAR, or a letter of map revision, is a process where FEMA revises the flood insurance rate maps to reflect the benefits of the levee. It was mentioned earlier in the meeting that previous LOMAR efforts that the Basin Commission has initiated has resulted in great benefits for the community west of Klein Avenue. Those communities are no longer subject to the mandatory flood insurance purchase requirements and development restrictions that those communities must enforce as a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program. The East Reach levees that are east of Klein Avenue have not received a letter of map revision despite some of the past efforts, but there are ongoing efforts to try to achieve that. The scope of our work included collecting and processing survey data for 30 plus miles of levee. And I'll show you a map on the next slide, exactly where we were working within the system. And then we performed a freeboard evaluation which was a comparison of the actual levee height to the required height. And we've got some graphics to share tonight as well. So this map shows the Little Calumet River levee system in its entirety. As you well know, it extends from the state line, Indiana-Illinois state line, to the east to the interchange of I-8094 and Interstate 65. All the levees are shown in various colors here, representing the different segments. Our evaluation included all segments, and I'll hover over them as I talk. We have the Hammond Forest Avenue segment. We have the Hammond levee. We have the Munster levee, the Highland levee, the Gary North levee, the Burr Street levee, the Gary South levee. We also have the Marshalltown levee, and then a couple segments which the Army Corps refers to as non-project segments. These are segments that were constructed by others or they existed prior to the federal project, and those notably are the INDOT non-project segment at the interchange, as well as the railroad non-project segment, which is an extension of the Gary North levee that goes along the railroad here to the north. Our survey data collection was performed using an unmanned aerial vehicle or a drone that used a LiDAR scanner that was mounted to that drone. And it collected a dense cloud of points, a bunch of data, which we then screened through and it's extracted elevations from those at approximately 100-foot intervals, as well as areas that were of importance to us at road crossings, at transitions from levee to flood wall, and in other important areas. The accuracy of our data was really, really good. With the drone, we can get accuracy up to about 1 inch, which is commensurate with and in line with ground survey accuracies as well. So we're able to collect very good data using the drone. And we were also able to collect very high resolution aerial photography along the flight. So I provided a sample of what that aerial photography looks like. And I really like this one. I shared this with Mr. Repay earlier. It is so clear that you can see people on the mowers while they're out here. And if I could zoom in a little further, you could even almost see who it is on the mower. It's very good imagery. That is great data that's collected that we can share with the Basin Commission. One of the challenges that we encountered was how to present such a large amount of information in a meaningful way. We could easily see this information on our computer screens back at the office, but we wanted to know how best we can share this with the Basin Commission and with others. So we ultimately decided to share this information in 2 ways. The first way was to produce a static map, like you see on the screen here, that showed elevation points along the levees, again, at approximately 100-foot intervals. So as you go along all these levee segments, this particular area is just west of Indianapolis Boulevard. We're seeing the Highland levee, the Munster levee, and the Hammond levee, and we have all these elevation points, again, at approximately 100-foot intervals. So we have static maps that we've shared with the Basin Commission already. In total, there are 15 of these maps for the 30-plus miles of levee that we study. And these maps are good. They're fine and dandy, but we wanted to give you an even better way of seeing this. So we created an online portal or platform so that the Basin Commission or others as needed could view this information digitally and interactively. So the screenshot you see here is very similar to that static map that you saw earlier, but this is from our online platform. And I'm going to attempt here to show you our online platform. If I can escape here and go to that. So this is the online platform, and you can zoom in to any location within the levee system. And I've just chosen Klein Avenue as a starting point, but you can peruse and go anywhere in this levee system, scan, pan, and you can see what the elevation of the crest of the levee is at anywhere within the levee system. All throughout the 30-plus miles from the Indiana-Illinois state line all the way to the interchange. So I'll just peruse a couple other areas here just so you can see the amount of data that's available here. Obviously, you have to zoom in to start seeing these points, but this is a very user-friendly platform that anyone with a computer and connection to internet can use. So we hope that this platform is very valuable to you, not only for this assignment, but also for the future, just having all this data available readily to you.
Oh, is that cool?
Okay, so I'm going to get to the next slide here back in the presentation. Talking about freeboard, I've used this term several times already, but wanted to make sure that we all were on the same page as to what that means. Freeboard is the vertical distance between the top of the levee and the water level that can be expected during the base flood. So I like to use this graphic down here at the bottom. I'm going to try to get this laser pointer back. So this is just a rough schematic of a levee, an earthen embankment, like a lot of areas within this system. And then we know what the flood elevation is. And then the levee is elevated, that crest is a certain distance higher than the flood elevation. And that difference between the levee crest and the flood elevation is called freeboard. And it provides a factor of safety and accounts for many of the unknowns that can contribute to higher flood elevations than we expect, such as debris getting caught on a bridge or some other factor that makes things worse than we expect. So we build in freeboard to levees in our designs to account for some of that uncertainty. So when we look at the criteria that FEMA looks at for accrediting levees or recognizing them on the flood insurance rate maps, we have to look at the Code of Federal Regulations, specifically what's called 44 CFR 6510. That's the section of the Code of Federal Regulations that deals with floodplain mapping. And we find when we look at that the freeboard is based on the 1% annual chance flood, or the 100-year flood event. This is a flood that has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. So that's the baseline flood that we're looking at for FEMA purposes. The Code of Federal Regulations goes on to say that the levees, to meet their criteria, must be 3 feet. There must be 3 feet of freeboard above that 100-year elevation across the entirety of the system. And then there has to be an additional half a foot above that minimum at the upstream end of the levee. So that would make it 3.5 feet. And then that would taper to no less than 3 feet at the downstream end. So that kind of gets a little bit complicated, this taper, especially when you're working with 30 plus miles of levee and also a system that's complex. We've got a control structure at Heart Ditch. We've got flow splitting in different directions. So what we decided for this assignment was that we were going to use 3.5 feet everywhere instead of applying that taper. And that was a conservative assumption. It accounts for some uncertainties in how FEMA would view this. And also it provides us a little bit of a buffer in the event that flood elevations go up slightly in the future. So basically 3.5 feet everywhere above the base flood elevation is what we're looking at for the height of the levee. I want to add one more thing to that, and this does occur in several locations throughout the system, is that there has to be an additional 1 foot of levee height upstream and downstream of bridge crossings. And the reason behind that is because debris can get clogged up in those bridge crossings and create a little bit of a surcharge in those areas. So you'll see some spikes in some lines here when I show you some graphics, and that's what that additional 1 foot represents. I also wanted to point out that this assignment, we're looking at FEMA requirements because that's what drives the flood insurance rate maps. But I wanted to make it very clear that this levee system was designed specifically for Army Corps of Engineers requirements. And the design criteria that they used was the 0.5% annual chance flood, or the 200-year flood, plus a variable amount of additional freeboard. generally throughout the system there, except the Marshalltown levee. That's a little bit of an exception. But I did want to point out that there were different criteria from the original design and the FEMA criteria that we look at right now for the levee accreditation. This graph is an example of one of the profiles that we created. I'm going to walk you through this. There's a lot of information here. And if I could figure out how to move this ribbon up here at the top, I would, but there we go. How about that? I'll walk you through what all this means. This particular graphic is specifically for the Gary South levee, but we created one of these graphics for each of the levee segments that we talked about earlier. So we're going to start at the bottom here with the dashed blue line. The dashed blue line is the 100-year flood elevation from the current effective FEMA flood insurance study. So this is the regulatory flood elevation along Little Calumet River. And I'll point out while we're down here at the bottom of the graphic, we've got all the roads labeled too, so you can find out where you are within the system. This particular graphic on the far left is Chase Street, and on the far right is MLK. The next line we're going to look at here is the solid blue line. The solid blue line is the freeboard line. So we talked about that last slide of 3.5 feet above the base flood elevation. So what you're seeing here is a 3.5 foot offset of that line. And we're also seeing those little bitty jumps here at road crossings. That's that extra foot of freeboard that's required upstream and downstream of crossings, 100 feet. And this is the line that the levee needs to be at or above this line to meet the FEMA requirements. The red line is the surveyed levee crest line that we got from the drone. So this is our elevation data that we had showed you. We plotted that against the blue line. And what we're really looking at here is the red line above the blue line. That means that the FEMA requirements are met. And clearly here, the red line is above the blue line in all areas, except for where we have temporary closures at road crossings. So the actual elevation when you install the sandbags or whatever type of closure you have is going to be up higher than the blue line. So we are good everywhere on the Gary South levee. One other line I wanted to point out was the green line. We also plotted the Army Corps of Engineers as-built elevations as best as we could from paper drawings. We plotted those on here because we wanted to see how that compared with the red surveyed line. And as you can see, there's pretty good agreement here. There's no huge deviations. Obviously, there are some differences, but the red lines and the green lines generally coincide, which gave us a level of comfort that our survey data was checking out as well. So overall, our findings here, I know I just talked about the Gary South levee, but overall for the 30+ miles of levee, in general, there's adequate freeboard or levee height for the FEMA criteria throughout the entirety of the levee system. But we did find a couple very small areas throughout the system where that red line was slightly below that solid blue line. But those differences were extremely small and they were for very short lengths. And a lot of times they would occur in those areas where you had to have the extra foot of freeboard. But wanted to point out that, and we'll get into this on the next slide, before coming up with recommendations on maybe a structural modification to the levee, we want to do some additional analysis hydraulically and maybe make some less conservative assumptions about that taper to see if we can meet all the requirements that way first. But more on that in a minute. As I also mentioned on that graphic, there were no major deviations between the surveyed levee crest line and the Army Corps as-built. So that red line and that green line were matching up pretty well. What we also identified as part of this project, at least for the East Reach levees that are east of Klein Avenue, primarily in Gary, when FEMA is approached in the future for a letter of map revision request, we definitely want to affirm with them the acceptability of the terminal points of those levees where they end and tie into natural high ground. Those are very important areas that FEMA looks at in those submittals. I wanted to highlight the western terminus of the Burr Street levee and the northern western terminus of the Gary North levee north of I-80-94. Those are two areas that we'd want to look into in close detail as part of a future LOMAR request, just to make sure that those meet all the requirements. Next steps and conclusions here. This is my last slide, and I'll be glad to open it up to any questions. But we are currently authorized by the commission to perform a two-dimensional hydraulic analysis of Little Calumet River. This will serve as an update to the existing flood elevations. This model is expected to be more accurate than the current flood elevations. So what we want to do when we're done with that work is to update those freeboard profiles for each levee segment using those new flood elevations. And based on that information, we'll then provide specific recommendations for any improvements that need to be made to address any freeboard deficiencies for the FEMA requirements. So we're hopeful that the new flood elevations will be at or below the current flood elevations. We're keeping our fingers crossed for that. That would certainly be a good sign, but we'll cross those bridges when they come, and we'll update those profiles when we get there. But overall, good news that the levee system meets the height requirements for FEMA for the vast majority of the system. So I'm at the end of the presentation now, and would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Gentlemen, any questions for this young man? That was a fabulous overview. Thank you very much.
Concur, Mr. Chairman, I do have some
Thank you,
questions.
Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Broadnex.
Thank you. AJ, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, I have like 4 or 5 questions.
Yeah, be glad to answer.
First 3 are sort of administrative.
Yeah.
One of the first slides you said something about you implied a difference between a LOMAR and a continuation of an existing LOMAR. What's the significance of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that really doesn't have a clear answer out there, but I'll try to answer as best as I can. So for projects that have an existing letter of map revision, like the levees that are west of Klein Avenue, we are not familiar with a process whereby FEMA goes back and reevaluates those at a certain time interval to check that they're still meeting all the requirements. In our experience, once you have a letter of map revision, that is in effect indefinitely. So
until you fail or something, right?
Yeah, until there's something that would prompt a change.
Okay.
There may be a change in how FEMA views that in the future, but in our experience, there's been no going back and rechecking or reevaluating a letter of map revision unless there's something that prompts that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The second one, terminology, you used the term dense cloud, and I guess that ties to the every 100 feet or so. Is there another sort of, I don't know, less dense, sparse cloud that you could use? And what's the difference in accuracy that we would get or something like that?
Yeah. So let me go back to that slide. I'm not sure the slide will help answer your question or not, but when that drone flies along the levee, it's continuously collecting elevation data as it flies. So it's shooting down information's going back up. So it's collecting a very dense
that might answer my fourth question.
Point cloud, if you want to call it that. And then we get a lot of information that we have to sift through a little bit to make sure that we're extracting the useful information from that. Because not all that data we really want, but we're collecting it as we're going along.
Okay, actually, it was gonna be my fourth question, but it's related to this then, I think maybe. You use the term crest of the levee, and I'm thinking it's a wall. Why would you have a
Yeah.
crest or a slope? But I did notice that the red line compared to the green line, the red
Mhm.
line looked like a mountain range and the green line looked like a wall.
Yeah.
Is that indicative of the fact that, and tying to all of these points of data that you're getting, that
Mhm.
it's getting like every little variance in elevation as we go? So like little dips and things, is that what that's reflective of?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'd like to clarify that we also not only the earthen levees included in this, but also the flood walls. So that was one of the areas where we really had to sift through the data because the levee crest on an earthen levee is much wider than the narrow top of the flood wall. But we indeed were able to get the top of flood wall elevations as we went along, and you do see those ups and downs. There are subtle differences. They look huge on this graph, but I think it's a little bit distorted by scale because each of these tick marks
It's
down
100
here
feet.
is 200 feet, I believe. Let me make sure that Anthony, yeah, 200 feet down here on the bottom, and then we've got a foot in this
Yeah.
area,
Okay.
so it's
So
kind of distorted a
yeah,
little bit.
okay,
So that's
half
why you're
percent,
seeing
a
all
foot
these.
over 200. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. I
yeah.
was wondering, it's like, man, is our wall good?
Yeah,
Okay,
when you go out there
and I
and look
also
at it,
forgot
you're
that's
not going to
earthen
see
levee too.
that with
Yeah.
your eye. Yeah,
Okay, very good.
really good
And then
question.
okay, thanks. And the last one was you mentioned a couple times about transmitting the information to us or others.
Yeah.
And I forget sometimes we're public, but when I hear that
Mhm.
in my private work, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is our data. Who else would
Yeah.
you be communicating this information to? Or is that just a general acknowledgement that we may want to share it? Or is there like a plan to share this information with somebody else?
Yeah, it's just a general acknowledgement that if you want to share it with others, that you have the ability to do that with the link that we provided you. It's not
Right.
a private
Okay.
connection. We haven't sent it to anyone else other than you, but you can share that with others if you so desire.
Perfect. I don't have any more questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, AJ.
Anyone else?
Okay, you're welcome.
I have a question with regards to the drone flyover and the high resolution pictures. Mr. Repay always wants to see pictures and have them data as far as where the dates were and the time that was shot. And will we have access to those?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we can provide that digital data. It's a large file size, so we may need to send it to you on a disk. And we're also going to see if we can get that uploaded to the online portal as well.
Thank you. Yeah, because if there's ways to do it, especially of the snapshots, for lack of a better term, because I'm old, where those locations are, because some of the more remote areas, that becomes more and more prevalent as we try to see before and afters.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Make that happen.
Chair, just one more
Yes, sir.
question. You can go, guy.
No, go ahead.
I thought he had a question.
Oh. Go ahead.
Great presentation, by the way.
Mine is simple. Maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. But when you guys start your borings, what do you plan on doing with the material that you bore and drill?
Yes, so a geotechnical investigation is planned for the levee. We're still trying to work out the details with the U.S. Army Corps with the Section 408 permit, as Mr. Repay alluded to earlier. So the exact plans for the disposal of those materials is still to be determined, but we probably need to find a location near the levee to dispose of those cuttings.
And you're just waiting for clearance from the Army Corps on?
Yes, we need permit approval to commence the work.
Okay, thank you.
It's you guys, Deck.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. AJ, for the green lines and the anomalies at 35th,
Yeah.
and what do you guys attribute that to?
Yeah, so great question. 35th Avenue is an interesting one here. That's one of the locations where the Basin Commission came in after the federal project and raised the road profile in that area. So that's why there's such a huge anomaly there. from the green line to the red line because there was a project that was initiated after the green line plans. That's why we're not seeing as much of a correlation there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom, is that where, or Dan, is that where the Corps was basically planning for 35th 2 flood as part of the project?
So no, 35th, remember, had the panels that were stored in the fruit shop, the old fruit shop.
Yeah.
And we built the over, and then the same for Harrison, where we rebuilt the bridge, where it had been, we had, those are all closure structures where we had to put the 33,000 sandbags. So when we raised Georgia and Harrison at 35th with the panels, that's why the as-built show as so low. And then now the red with where they flew it over shows where it is now, so we don't have to close that area. So the only closures in Gary that we would have is Grant and Broadway. And I don't think that shows up here, does it?
Yeah, here you go, Dan. You can see we're showing those temporary closures right here at Grant, and then Broadway is also over here. But you're exactly right. Georgia and Harrison are very similar to 35th, where you have these big spikes in this green line, but Little Calumet Basin Commission has initiated projects there since the as-builts were created.
Mr. Wishlinski.
Touching on what Commissioner Whitaker was asking, when you do the borings, obviously you're still going through the approvals from the Corps.
Yeah.
Are you gonna inject those holes with the slurry or some sort of cementitious material after you take the boring?
Yes, those borings will be likely backfilled with a bentonite material, bentonite grout or bentonite chips. We're still ironing out the details on that, but that's typically the backfill that is used in these type of applications.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. That was very well done. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Moving right along. Next up is other issues, new business.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-13 and the Fifth Amendment to the Leaf Compost Agreement with the Lake County Solid Waste Management District, subject to legal review.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Repay, how long have we been doing this?
Well, this is the Fifth Amendment. I think we've been doing it for, I want to say it's 8 years, because I think the first couple of them we did, we had 2-year agreements on them.
And this is right at 35th and Chase.
Fifth and Chase, right behind the old fruit market. It's adjacent to, there's that school over there, there's the firing range over there, across the street from Maya.
After that, any questions on this? Get a motion in a second.
I think the motion says addendum. We said amendment. I don't think that really matters though, does it? Attorney Nicole. We don't need to redo it or anything, right?
Are you asking?
I made a stated amendment.
I don't
So it's an
think it's
addendum?
material, but I just wanted to throw it out.
Let me clarify, Fifth Addendum.
Roger.
Thank you, Anthony.
Ms. Bennett, do I have to worry about Robert on this rule?
Have to worry about what, I'm sorry?
Robert's rule, right? Robert, who gets to
Regarding
make the
the
rules?
addendum or the amendment language?
His motion.
No, that's fine.
There's a motion and a second still. Mrs. Lambert.
Tom Schlinsky,
Yes.
Tom Gozdecki,
Yes.
Anthony Brodnick.
Yes.
Ron Ware,
Yes.
Yvonne Whitaker.
Yes.
Lee Baker.
Yes. Under new business, I'm gonna add another motion for a project that's timely and just came to us.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement with SEH DLZ for a preliminary engineering report on the Hobart Dam in an amount not to exceed $155,000, subject to legal review.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Repay.
Yeah, just to give quick background, you had authorized us to look for engineering firms to help us design a fix or an improved version of the Hobart Dam, Lake George Dam. However, I have it up on the screen. I can probably zoom in a little bit better. So what you're seeing above is this road here is Ridge Road. This is the dam in question, and I'll zoom in even closer. If you haven't been out there, here's the dam under high flow conditions, extremely high flow conditions. It will top over these sidewalks. And this is the relief valve that they designed for us, which is a small sluice gate that really is ineffective by most standards. So the intention then is to, in cooperation with the city of Hobart, is to redesign this area. And I could probably zoom out, which will encompass the entire area, help you understand.
Where's the railroad bridge in relation to
I'll
this?
go one more, and you'll see the railroad bridge. One more of that.
Because we did that, what,
Yeah.
like 8, 9
So
years
if
ago?
You can see if you can see the cursor, there's the railroad bridge that we did. Right there. That was expanded, I'd say 6, 7 years ago at this point in time. This is their sanitary district in this area. This is Duck Creek coming through. If you remember the study that was done, there was a lot of problems on Duck Creek with the Bricky Bowl and everything else flooding. Because we fixed the railroad bridge, because there was a 3-foot head differential on it, 2.5, 3 feet, there are no longer any issues currently that we can see or experience since this has been completed. So it sort of resolved itself. The next item in a 2016 FCH report showed that we had to do 3rd Street, Wisconsin Street, which were all accomplished by the city of Hobart themselves. They raised the decks on those. So this would be the last component here, which is the dam. I'll zoom in because it's easier. And by doing this, we would want to mimic sort of something similar, maybe not exactly, but the rock riffle, this is very difficult to maintain when you have logs and trees cut down. The access to it is very limited. You're actually sending people out there to clean the dam. And if you've ever been out there, the flow is pretty fierce. Yeah. So you see the little buoys there are the only thing that sort of protects if someone is to be doing recreation out there from going through those chutes. That small little structure you see is a 1-lane pedestrian bridge. You can only fit 1 person on it. So anyways, we asked a bunch of engineering firms to submit their quote resume to us. 2 groups submitted. One was Burke and Butler, Fairman, Seaford. They joined together, and the other group was SEH and DLZ, and both are fine firms. All of them are good firms. All of them had great ideas. Just talking with Hobart and discussing the recommendation is for SEH and DLZ to basically give us what you're approving now is to give us a couple options as to what the new look could be, understanding the hydraulics of it, helping water flow through there. As we all know, Deep River controls what little happens in Little Cal. So if we can get the water through there quicker in an efficient way without impacting anyone downstream, not flooding the Hobart downtown like that had happened in the past. Even sort of the trailway in downtown Hobart flooded in 18, I believe. So what you're doing basically now is allowing DLZ SEH to proceed with sort of some options for us to choose from with our help from our city Hobart.
I have a question.
I don't know if I should zoom in or zoom out, but
So who controls the flow and opens those gates? Is it the Public Works at the city of Hobart?
yes, but it doesn't. We modeled that, and opening that gate has no bearing. It's so small that it's insignificant as far as it would take days for you to open that gate to drop down the level of the lake itself.
So the new engineering is not gonna necessarily have all of those gates, or, I mean,
No.
what are we calling them? Float? No.
It's all gonna be naturally done. So if
Similar like in Lake Station at the Rock River.
if the water goes up, more
Really?
water can get through the system. It can be easily maintained, so we're not out there putting people out in front of this dam.
Thank you.
That's the goal.
All right, we're just doing engineering. Yes, Ms. Bennett.
Because this is a new item to the agenda, you do need to ask for any public comment on this.
Great. Is there any public comment on it? If there is, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we'll try to help answer. 155 grand doing preliminary engineering. Going once, going twice, closing that.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So, any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hey, Mr. Repay, quick one. Do you have an estimated time frame for two things? One, the let's say preliminary engineering, and then if there's a subsequent, like a detailed design, if that's a little bit further, and then I don't know if they told you then ultimately when it would be constructed. I mean, are we 3 years, 2 years?
I mean, it's gonna take, so it'd be roughly 6 months, assuming we get an agreement together that's acceptable to our attorney and everyone here. And
So end of
then,
this year, okay.
and then we have to choose one of those options. And then
With
we
Lambert,
would then
right?
come back to this board for an engineering contract with that firm. So if it just comes to this, it could stop there. I mean, if we don't come up with a conclusion or a well-designed, which I don't think might happen, but if we don't make it to the next step, then it's gotta be engineered. So I figure if something like this would take at least 9 months to design, although most of the hydraulics, there's 12 been documented hydraulic side of this. It would just simply be probably the borings dealing with what's underneath and the DNR permitting, because you're now functioning inside of a water basin.
Mm.
I
Okay,
mean,
so if we were, I
honestly,
mean, if everything goes swimmingly, no pun intended, we're
Yeah.
probably 2027, 2028 before this is complete.
27 before it's constructed, I would guess, at best.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the giggles. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion and a second, Mrs. Lambert.
Shinsky,
Yes.
Bezdegi,
Yes.
Anthony Brudnik.
Yes.
Ron Ware,
Yes.
Levon Whitaker,
Yes.
William Baker.
Yes. Moving right along. Next up is the next meeting, which is gonna be on Wednesday in July, believe it or not, July 16th, 2025. Check the website for any modifications and entertain a motion to adjourn. Is
So
Motion to
move.
adjourn.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much, everybody.